Today I'm going to be taking you through the basics of using JetEngine to create a more dynamic WordPress website. If you're a beginner and you have no skills or understanding of how this works, then this video is going to be perfect for you. We're going to take a look at JetEngine, Elementor Pro, and how we can combine those two together to create a much more dynamic, versatile website. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, the channel where I help you create more powerful WordPress websites. If this is your first time on the channel, please consider subscribing and smashing that bell icon below to be notified every time we add new content. Okay, so let's just jump over into the dashboard. I'm going to show you the plugins we're going to use, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of what JetEngine is and what it does. So let's take a quick look at what we're actually going to create during this video. As you can see, we're currently looking at the properties page, and if we scroll down, we've got a list of all the properties that we can choose from. If we click to go into any of those properties, we can take a look at the properties all inside our custom setup, inside our custom template. If we also take a look on this section below, you can see we've got various different custom fields that we've included that are not part of your normal WordPress. So things like the price, the location, custom gallery specific to this particular property, all those things are laid out. We've also got across the top the ability to fine-tune or choose where or what category we want to look at. So for example, we may only want to look at penthouses, or we may only want to look at houses. Well, we can do that. So we can click on penthouse and that'll only show us the penthouses. If we go into the houses, that'll filter it out and only show us the houses. So this video is going to demonstrate not only how to create custom templates, meta fields and so on, it's also going to introduce you to taxonomies. And this is something that's very, very useful for organizing and categorizing the content that you want to create as part of your website. So let me just take you over now into the dashboard, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of what JetEngine is and how we can actually start to use it. Let's quickly take a look at the plugins that we're going to be using throughout this video. Now, I've got a couple installed already that you don't need to install. They're just personal preference and for me to make the whole process of creating this video just a little bit quicker and smoother. So all we really need to have is Elementor, the free version, Elementor Pro so we can tap into the theme building functions that we need, and JetEngine. And JetEngine, as we're going to cover in this video, is the way that we can create these custom posts. So as long as you've got those installed, we're ready to go and start creating our first setup. Now, if you're new to working with tools like JetEngine to create more dynamic websites, it can seem kind of overwhelming. All the different terminology that's being thrown around may be one of those things you just can't get your head around. So I'm going to quickly go over and just explain some of the things that we're going to be using. If we come over to the JetEngine section on the left-hand side, you can see we've got various different settings. In this video, we're going to take a look at a couple of these, but they're the core functions that we need to start being able to create our own custom post types and so on. So let's just break these terms down. What exactly is a post type? Well, if you consider using WordPress, you've got posts. And those posts can contain anything like video content, text content, and so on. So they're just a post type. Then you look at pages, and effectively they're the same kind of thing. They're just a more customized post type that has slightly less features. So with tools like Advanced Custom Fields and JetEngine and so on, we can create our own custom post types, and then we can assign their own custom meta fields. Now, what exactly is a meta field? Well, a meta field is basically, again, if we use the analogy of the posts, you've got the title, you've got the content, you've got the featured image, and all those kinds of things. They are basically meta fields. So the terminology can be kind of confusing, but the theory behind it is pretty simple and straightforward. Now, on top of that, we've also got what are called taxonomies. Now, this is a term that you may or may not be familiar with, and all it really means is it gives us a way to organize our content into simple groups. So again, if we go back to posts as an example, if you're used to working with WordPress, you will know you have tags and you have categories, and you can assign those to individual or multiple posts. So both tags and categories are taxonomies inside WordPress. So now you kind of have a grasp of what those things are. Hopefully when we take a look at JetEngine and we start to create post types, meta boxes, taxonomies and so on, it'll just take a little bit of that mystery or the confusion out of it. So let's take a look first of all at what we have inside JetEngine and what we are going to concentrate on in this first video. We're going to take a look at post types, we're going to take a look at taxonomies, and we're going to take a look at listings. Now you may be thinking, well, why are we not touching on meta boxes? Well, meta boxes is how we can assign custom meta fields, like I say, like the title and so on, to an existing post. For example, the WordPress posts. We want to do something slightly different. We want to create a custom post type. We want to control every aspect of our new post type. So for our example, we're going to be taking a look at creating a custom post type all based around properties. With that in mind, we'll start creating our first step, which is to go through the process of creating our new post type. So to create our post type, we're going to come over to JetEngine and we're going to just simply choose post types. That will then take us in and allow us to do one of two things. We can either create a custom post type with JetEngine, or we can adjust and set up things inside the built-in post types that we already have within WordPress. If I click on that, this will show you all the different post types that you currently have available, things like your posts, your pages, and depending upon what kind of software you've got installed, we'll have things like My Templates, custom fonts, and so on. We want to focus on JetEngine for this example, so we're going to make sure that's the option that's selected. And as you can see, currently we have no post types enabled. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up and we're going to click on Add New. Once we've done that, we can now go through the process of creating our custom post type. Now this looks kind of daunting because it looks like there's going to be lots of options, things like the general settings and labels and terms about slug and so on. So what exactly do all these things mean? Well, again, let me take you through and show you what's important and what we can choose to change, add or insert if we want to, but they are basically optional. So let's start off first of all with the general settings section. We've got post type name and we've got post type slug. Now the post type name is basically what you want to name it so it makes sense to you. So for this example, we're going to call this properties because we're dealing with properties. Now if we come and click underneath, you can see it automatically pre-fills out that post type slug. Now let me just explain what a slug is if you don't really know. All it really means is whenever you go to a page or a category or a section inside WordPress, it's going to have your domain name, something like wptuts.co.uk / and then it'll have something after it. Well, in this case, if we wanted to look at the properties, it would be / properties. So the slug is just basically a nice, simple, clean way of differentiating each of the different sections, the different posts, custom post types, and so on. Now we'll come back to this a little later on when we create a menu structure where we want to access our custom archive page to display our properties. So I say, don't worry too much about that now. It'll automatically fill it in, but if you want to take a little more control over it, you can change it. Just need to make sure that you adopt the naming convention of making sure that anywhere you want to put a space, you can't put that. You have to put either an underscore or to put a separator, the little minus sign. You can see it tells us that right next to where it says post type slug. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you try to put something in and you want spaces, you have to separate with an underscore or with a dash. So next up, we've got labels. Now labels is one of those things that is effectively totally optional. You see we've got things like singular name, add new item. Well, if we wanted to, we can make it a little bit more personalized. So instead of saying singular name or add new, we could say add new property or add a property, whatever you kind of want. But like I say, these are purely optional. You don't have to put anything in here if you don't want to. It's up to you. So you can look through those. You can have a little play about, try them out, insert different values in there and see if it actually makes you understand exactly what we're talking about there. But like I say, purely optional. Let's close that down. Advanced settings. Now this is one of those things that for the most part, you could leave the settings as they are. However, there's a couple of things that we need to do if we want to make this work the way that we want it to in this example. Now most of the values are fairly self-explanatory and they've also got a little help underneath there. So it's worthwhile taking a little time, taking a look at these. And if you want to test some of these out to see the effect they have, then by all means do. The only thing that's going to happen is you'll make a change. If it doesn't work the way you expect it to or doesn't do what you want, you can simply come back in and revert that change. So let's scroll down. You can see we've got things like register query var. All quite complicated sounding things. Leave them as they are. The only things we need to worry about are the things like has archive. We need to make sure that is enabled because we want to be able to create our custom archive. And then we've got hierarchical. Now, all that really means is, can we have a structure? In other words, can we have parent and can we have child values? So you could have bungalows, for example, or houses, and then underneath there you could have different types of houses. Or you could have apartments, and then you could have things like penthouse apartments and ground floor apartments. It's just a way of having multiple levels to structure the way your data is actually going to be stored inside the database. I generally tend to use hierarchical if we're going to have slightly more complex kinds of sites, like we'd have with this, where you could have multiple different levels of actual sectioning of the different content. Menu position, we're going to set that to be position 1, and all that really means is where's it going to be displayed on the left hand side of the screen. Menu icon, well, we can simply come in and we can choose a different icon because we're going to deal with properties. Let's choose something that's a bit more in keeping with that, so we'll just choose properties, and then you see it says supports. As you can see, we've already got some values in there. We've got title and we've got editor. So what exactly do they mean? Well, if you remember back to earlier on when I explained the kind of way that custom post types and so on work, I said if you look at things like the post section, we've got things like title, we've got editor, and we've got featured image and so on. These are the default meta fields that a post type will have. So these are built into WordPress itself. So we can take advantage of those without having to recreate them in our custom posts. So title is, as its name would suggest, is the title. The editor is where you normally put in the body content for any of the posts you may create. Now we can add extra sort of features that we want inside here. So we can leverage the power of what WordPress already has. If we click, you can see that opens up a list of options and we can choose all the different things we've got available. As you can see, title and editor are already selected. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to say we want thumbnail, the featured image. So now this means that if we add no custom fields to our new post type, we'll have the title, we'll have the editor, and we'll have the thumbnail or featured image. So we'll have those in there. So that's great. We've got those already set up. So the next thing we do now is come into our meta fields. And this is where we can start adding in our custom meta information, our custom fields. So let's expand that out. And you can see we've got the option to say new meta field. Let's click to create a new meta field. And let's take a look at the options we've got. Now again, this may seem a little bit daunting to start off with, but take your time, go through it, see what the different types of fields actually show. And this is going to give you a good understanding of the basics of it anyway. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give the label. So the label is just basically the name that we want the person to see when they're actually going to fill this in on our custom post type. It's just there to give them information about what they've got to put in there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call this property price. Underneath that, we've got name stroke ID. If we click inside there, you see it automatically pre-fills that out based upon the label that we've given it. And also, like I said, when we come into naming any of these meta fields, you can't put a space. So it automatically puts in that dash to make sure that we know there's no spaces in there by accident. Next, we have object type. And this is basically what kind of object, what kind of field are we going to create. We click to expand, you can see we've got field. We've got tab, accordion, and endpoint. For this example, we're just going to use field. And I'm not going to go into any detail of the other three. We'll take a look at that in a future, more advanced video. For now, I want to keep this really simple as a nice beginner's guide. Then we've got the field type. In other words, what kind of data or information do we want the end user to input, and what are we allowing them to input? So if we click, you can see we've got a whole range of different types of fields that we can use: text, date, time, and so on and so forth. Even though we're going to use a numeric value in this, we just need to select text because there's no actual numeric or number value as part of a field type. The text and the number are kind of just lumped into one. So let's just choose text. Description is one of those things that's purely optional if you want to tell the end user what you want them to put in there. If there's something a little bit sort of, they'd be unsure, they could make a mistake. However, when it comes to property price, I think it's fairly self-explanatory what they have to put in. Field width, as its name would suggest, is how wide we want this to display inside the actual editor for the post. Then we've got character limit, default value, and is it required? Well, we're going to leave those values as they are, and we're going to say, yes, this is required. We need to have them to put in that numeric value for the price. Shrink that down, and we're going to create another meta field. So let's say new meta field, and we're going to do the same thing again. However, this time we're going to call this location. You see, once I click inside the name ID, it automatically fills that out. Field is perfectly fine. A field type of text, again, is fine. So we're going to leave all those things. We're just going to say is required. We're going to add one more meta field, and we're just going to call this one gallery. And from there, gallery is fine. We're going to come into the field type. We'll leave that as is, but the field type, we're going to come down and we're going to say we want this to be gallery. Now this is going to allow us to upload multiple images at the same time, which is a nice way of being able to create those custom galleries like we saw on the individual property page. And again, we're going to leave all those values as they are. So that's our meta field setup. We've got one more option now, which is called admin columns. Now, if you're wondering what this does, is all it really allows us to do is sort of insert additional columns into the admin section for these new posts we're going to create. Now, let me just save this as it is, and I'll show you what we've got to start off with, and then we'll come back in and add some columns so it kind of makes a bit more sense before I get stuck in doing exactly what we want to do inside the admin column section. So let's say add post type. Once that's finished, you can see now on the top left-hand corner, we've now got our properties, and we've got properties and add new. So let's just jump into the properties section. This would list all the properties we currently have. And as you can see, we don't have anything in there, but the only information we've got for the actual new properties is going to be the title, the name of it, and the date that it was inserted. So it's not really giving us much information. So this is where the beauty of working with JetEngine and coming into the post types, where we can come in and we can easily edit and add in custom admin columns. So let's just do that. Let's add in our first new admin column. So we're going to click, going to give it a title, and we're going to call this featured image. Next up, we've got to choose what kind of data are we going to reference inside this admin column. You can see we've got meta value, we've got post terms, and we've got custom callback. First of all, we're going to say custom callback because what we want to do is we want to put the featured image in there. So I have no idea what I would actually use for this. So I can easily call upon this selector of existing callbacks, click on there, and you can see we've got a selection of different options. What we want is this final one, which says render image tag by post thumbnail or image from meta. In other words, it's just simply going to use the featured image. So we're going to click on that. We can choose the thumbnail. So set field, thumbnail is fine. We can say size, which is going to be the pixel value for this particular image. Everything's good on there. We say apply. And then you can see we've got column order. So we're going to set this to be column order number 2. Prefix, suffix, do we want to put anything in there? We can do that if we want to, and we can also make it sortable. However, I don't want to do any of those things. We are going to add another new field in. So we can say add new. And once we've done that, the next one we're going to call property location. So we're going to call that property location. Next, we've got the type. We're going to use meta value this time, and we're going to reference one of the fields that we just created, one of our custom fields. And to do that, all we need to do is scroll back up to our custom fields. You can see we've got these 3. We've got location. So all we're going to do is click to expand that out. You can see the name ID is location. That's all we need to worry about. So we're going to scroll down, field name, location. Column order, we're going to set that to be 3. And we're going to make this sortable, so we can sort based upon that. It then says, is this a numeric value? Well, it's not going to be a numeric value because this is actually going to be using a location. So we're all good to go on there. So once we've done that, let's just save this again to update our post type, come back to our properties and go into the property section. And from there, you can see now we've got title, featured image, property location, which is selectable. So we can filter that, and finally date. So currently we have no content in there. So we'll come back a little later on, put some content in, and you'll see then how this actually fleshes it out. Now that we've created the basics of our custom post type with JetEngine, we're now ready to move on and start creating our custom taxonomies. Now, if you remember back at the beginning of this video, I explained what a taxonomy was, and all it is a way of us allowing us to easily group our content together. Now, because we're working with properties in this example, we're going to create a property types taxonomy. And in here, we can simply create the different types of property we'll be listing. So once we've come into the dashboard, over to JetEngine, we simply choose taxonomies, and it'll bring us into this section where we can go in and list any of the taxonomies we previously created, or we can come in and create a new one. So we're going to do just that. At the top, you see we have Add New. So we're going to click on Add New, and that'll take us into the settings that allow us to create our taxonomy. Now, you should notice that quite a few different features inside here look very similar to where we created our post type, and they operate in a very similar fashion. So the first thing we can see we've got is the taxonomy name, then the slug, and then we have a new entry called post type. So let's fill this first section in first. So the first thing we're going to do is give this taxonomy a name. So we're going to come in and we're going to type in property types. Once we click underneath into the taxonomy slug, you'll see it pre-fills that information out for us, which is perfect. And then the post type option. So we click on there, you can see it opens up a list of a lot of options that we can choose from. Now, these will be different depending upon the kind of tools that you have inside your copy of WordPress, but you will see some common things like posts, pages, media, revisions, and so on. However, what we want to do is we want to choose the custom post type that we've created. So if we look at this list, you can see we go down, we've got properties, which is the custom post type we created. We'll select that, and that's the first thing we need to do. Now, if we want to associate this with more than one post type, we could do that by simply clicking and adding a second, a third, and fourth, and so on. However, we're going to keep this really simple. We only want to assign this particular taxonomy to the properties custom post type. Next up, let's expand the labels out. And much the same as I said when we created our post type, these are purely optional. You don't have to fill in any of the values inside this section. But you can, if you want to, change anything inside there and put your own values in. So up to you, purely optional. Let's close that down. Then we've got the advanced settings. Click and open that up, and you can see we've got, again, a lot of options that look very similar to the post types. And because we've kind of created a taxonomy that works alongside a post type, a lot of these options are exactly the same. So things like, do you want to show it in the admin UI? Is it available in the admin menu, which is this section up the top? So you can choose anything you want on there that you think is relevant to what you are creating. However, again, what we want to do is set this hierarchical option so we can create a hierarchy structure of custom taxonomies. We'll choose that option. If we want to create a description, we could do that. We can also come in and create custom meta fields. Now, normally, meta fields would normally be associated with custom post types and things along those lines. However, if you wanted to create an archive page that had some extra information, so it could be a description along with maybe an image you want to use inside there, you could create your own custom meta fields and then assign it to the taxonomy in exactly the same way you would have done that with the post types. And we will take a look at that in a future video where I cover things in a lot more detail, and we'll take a sort of use case and we'll build something out using JetEngine. For now, for this beginner's example, we're going to leave that as it is. And that's the end of the options we need to set up. So we're going to simply come up to the top, choose Add Taxonomy, let that save, and once we've done that, if we come up to our properties, you can see we now have property types, which is our taxonomy, and it's been associated with the properties. So if we come to posts, for example, we don't see that entry. Come to pages, again, we don't see that custom taxonomy entry. So it's only been associated with the properties custom post type. So now that we've created that taxonomy, let's put some information in and take a look at how it works. We're going to come to the properties option and into property types. Once we're in there, you can see if you've ever used normal taxonomies inside WordPress, like I say, your tags or your categories for your posts, you'll see this looks exactly the same. However, if we created some additional meta fields, they would also be listed on this left-hand section and allow us to fill out any data that we associated with it. For this example, we're going to keep this really straightforward and we're going to put in houses, add a category, we'll put apartments, add a category, and we'll put in flats and add our category. Now, because we've set hierarchical as an option, you can see we also have the parent category option available to us. If we'd set this not to be hierarchical, we wouldn't see this option. So with that in place, we've now created our 3 different custom taxonomies, flats, apartments, and houses. And if we come into the properties now and add new, we'll find that we've got this new entry on the right hand side called property types. Because this has been associated with our properties custom post type, we can also then associate it with the property types and start to categorize all of our data. So let's go ahead and pre-fill some data in for our properties. So when we start to create our archive and single post templates, we're going to have some data to work with. So inside the properties, we're going to add a new, and we're just going to call this ground apartment. We'll drop in some filler text into the description. We're going to choose apartments as our property type. We're simply going to come in then to our set featured image, and we're going to choose one from there. So we'll just choose this one, set our featured image, and then we can put in our custom data. So our property price, we're going to set this as something like 350,000. Location, London. However, you could put the full location inside your full address if you wanted to. I'm just keeping this really simple. Choose our media, and then we can just load in any images we want to associate with this as part of a gallery. Choose our media, and you can see there's our custom gallery all set up. So all the data that we need for this particular apartment has now been added. So we'll hit publish on there. Once we've done that, we're going to come back and take a look at our properties listing, and we can see that we've got our custom columns inside here as well. So our featured image being displayed, our property location is being displayed alongside the default title and date. So I'm going to go ahead now, add a couple more properties in using exactly the same technique, and then we're going to take a look at how we start to build the archive page to display these actual listings. There we go. There's our 3 properties all ready to be styled up inside the custom archive and inside the custom single post templates. So that's the next thing we're going to take a look at. Now that we're ready to create those template files as part of our theme, all we need to do is go into the dashboard, come over to templates and choose theme builder. And then a list of any of the predefined layouts that we've created will be listed inside here. You can see I've already gone ahead and created the default header and the default footer for this layout, and I've just simply used the templates that are part of Elementor Pro just for speed. So we're now ready to create those 2 different kinds of templates that we need. In this section, we're going to concentrate on the archive. So let's click to create an archive. So once we click archive, you'll see it now takes us through. Because we have nothing else in there, we're simply going to create a new archive. We're going to choose a name for this, and we're just going to call this default property archive, and then we're going to click on create template. That will then take us through into the Elementor editor, and we can choose from any of the predefined layers if you want to use those as a starting point, or we can start completely and utterly from fresh. And that's what we are going to do. So I'm going to close this down just so we come into the normal editor. And as you can see, there's the header, there's the footer that I've created as part of this template setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to say we want to add in a new section. So we're going to click, we're going to choose a simple 1 row, 1 column. Click to add a little bit of space above and below. So we're just going to add some padding above and below, and there we go. Come back over to our widgets, and you can see because we've chosen an archive for our particular template, we've got a couple of options at the top on the left hand side that only associate themselves with the archive: the title, the archive post, and the author box. What we're going to do first of all is we're simply going to drag in this archive posts option. You can see now what that does is it automatically pulls in what it thinks is the right information. And for this example, it's just basically your normal posts and the hello world post that's installed as part of WordPress by default. Now that's not what we want. So we need to change that and tell it what content we want to reference. In our example, the properties. So we're going to come down to the little cog icon in the bottom left hand corner and click on settings, and from there you see we have an option that says preview settings. We can click on there, and from there we can choose what we want to use as our preview. Now you can see it currently says recent posts, but we don't want that. We want to use the properties. So all we need to do is come down and choose property archive, then click on apply and preview, and after a second or two we'll see it load in and it'll show us the actual content that we want to view. Now you can see it pulls in the featured image, the name, and some other information. Well, we can still fine tune this a little further and get more what we want out of this. So let's click to activate this, and we take a look on the left hand side. We've got our normal section where we can go through and create and customize and do all those kinds of good things that we can do with any of the widgets inside Elementor and Elementor Pro. First thing we're going to do is choose a different skin. Now skin is just basically a design. So you can see we currently have 3 options: classic, cards, and full content. We're going to choose the cards option, and that'll give it a little bit more of a fresh, modern look. Next up, we can choose the number of columns we want to display, whether we want to show the image or not, if we want to use masonry, so if we've got different heights, it'll compensate for all that. We'll leave those at the default values. We are going to change the image size because you can probably notice that it's not the greatest looking quality image. So let's just choose a slightly larger version and we'll have a nice quality image to see from there. We can adjust the image ratio if we want to, so we can get this to look exactly how we want. And we can also come down and enable, disable, style, and control every other element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off some of the things that I don't want on here. I don't want comments, I don't want the date. Title is perfectly fine, and so is excerpt. However, we don't want the read more option, don't want the badge, and we don't want the avatar. So we end up with a nice, simple, clean layout. You've then got things like pagination, which is enabled by default, but you can come in and you can style that a little differently. So depending upon the number of properties you go into list, that will dictate as and when you'll see the pagination options. We could go through and style this in any other way if we wanted to, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to leave that as is. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit on publish, and that will allow us to set up the conditions for when this particular template is going to be used. So let's click on publish. That'll take us through now into choosing the condition. So we click on add condition, and you can see it currently says include all archives. Now if you consider that an archive template would be used for our custom post type, our properties, but also things like the posts and any other custom post types that are created, we don't want that. We want this to be specific to just our properties. To do that, all we need to do is change this condition. So it says all archives, you click and you'll see we have a lot of different options. Now, depending upon the type of template that you're creating and the types of plugins and the content you have as part of your website, you may see some different things inside here. However, what we want is, you can see we've got post archive and we've also got property archive. So we're going to simply choose properties archive, and it'll only assign it to this specific setup on our site. So anytime we look at the properties archive, this is the template it'll use. Any other archives will use the standard default template. If we wanted to, we can add a second condition in there, and we can also do things like include or exclude, so we can fine tune to make sure we get exactly the conditions to use this particular template that meet exactly to the criteria that we want. Let's get rid of that. This is all we need to do. We'll hit save and close, and that's now set up the basics. We've gone ahead and we've created that archive template. Now if we wanted to, we could go in and add some extra information into here, design it, style it any way we want. For this example, we're going to leave it as it is. So that's how we create the archive templates. So how do we go about actually referencing that archive template now? So let's come out of Elementor, exit to our dashboard, and let's go in first of all into JetEngine and take a look at our post types. Now, as you can see, this is the slug for our post types, which is properties. This is what we need to reference where we want to actually access that particular template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that from there. We're going to come over into our appearance section and into menus. And from there, this is our basic main menu that we're going to use. So we're going to create a custom link. So if you don't see that inside here, all you need to do is go to the screen options at the top and enable anything that you want from there. So underneath the custom link, the first thing we're going to do is put in the URL. So we know what the slug is, we know its properties. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a /, I'm going to paste in properties, and then I'm going to put another /. Now the reason that I do this is because we may be developing a website on one domain and then we might want to migrate it somewhere else. Well, by doing this, we don't care what the domain is. We're saying that whatever the domain is, this will be forwarded by properties, and that will then be used to link through to that particular archive template. Hope that makes sense. So now we're going to just put in the text we want to use, and we'll just say add to menu. And there we go, that's inside our menu. So we're going to set this as our primary menu, and we're going to say save menu. And now that we've done that, we can take a look at our site and we can see that we have that new entry in our menu structure, which we can then link through to the archive that will show us all of our particular properties. So on the homepage of our test site, this just basically isn't set up with anything, but you can see that our navigation now at the top with our new properties entry, we click on that, that will take us over now and show us our new custom archive with the 3 different properties listed inside there for us. If we click on one of these, we can go through and we'll see that we get taken through to what looks like a very basic site with no extra information, no images, none of the data that we've put in. So let's rectify that now by going through and creating that single post template. So now we're back in our dashboard and we need to go through and create that single post template. So what we're going to do is come into templates again and down to theme builder. From there, we're going to choose single. And now we're going to say add new single, and this allows us to create our single post template. So you can see we've got single at the top, select the post type. Now this, because we can create custom post types and there can be various different types of post types, we need to tell it what we want this single post template to assign to. Click on there, properties is the option that we want. We don't want posts, pages, or the 404. So choose properties, and then we're going to put in the name for this. So we're going to call this default property single. Create our template. And again, that will load up the Elementor editor where we can go through and we can close this down and start building this out our own way. Now, if we take a look at the left-hand side, you can see we've got different options to when we were working with the archive template. And this is because we're now creating a single post template, and therefore the options that are associated with it by default are different. So these 8 current options allow us to do a range of different things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a single section inside here. We're going to click, we're going to again do the same thing again. We're going to select it, come to advanced, and we're just going to put some spacing above and below. So there we go. Next, we're going to come back to our widgets and we're going to say we want to put the featured image inside this. So we're going to simply drag that over and drop that in there. And this will now reference the featured image for any of the posts that are clicked on and we're taken over to this single post template. So this is just showing us filler information pulled from our particular data. So our custom post type being properties, it's just pulling in one of those entries so we can see what we're working with when we're fleshing this out. So that's our property. There's our featured image. So we've done the first part of it. So the next thing we're going to do is come in and we're going to create another section. And this time we're going to create a 2-column section. And inside there, we're going to drag in some more widgets. So we're going to come back over to our widget section, come over to this time we want to pull in the post title. So we're going to drag and drop that there. Give it a second or so, when you see that loads that data in. Going to come back out. We're going to say we're going to pull the post content in. So that's the main content that we pulled in. Now we've pulled in all the basic elements that we have that are part of a normal post type, we can now go through and reference the custom data that we set up. Now this is done slightly differently because we don't have any widgets that are specific to the custom data that we've put in. We need to create something a little different. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. The next thing we're going to do is put the gallery in below the description. So we're going to come down to the Pro Elements and choose the gallery option. Drag that widget to where we want it. And we now have all the normal controls that are part of Elementor Pro. Now, most of the widgets inside Elementor Pro will give us dynamic options. So you can see we've got dynamic for where we want to choose the images. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on there, and you can see this now gives us a range of different options from where we can get the data to populate this gallery. What we want to do is come down underneath the JetEngine section and choose JetEngine Gallery. I'm going to click on there and you see that nothing actually happens because all we've done so far is tell it that we want to reference a JetEngine gallery. We haven't told it what JetEngine gallery we want to use. So if we click on this little wrench icon and click to expand that out, you can see we've got field as an option. If we click on there, that will show us any of the fields that are associated with galleries as part of JetEngine inside our custom post type. Now obviously we only created one, but there could be times where you want to reference or create multiple different galleries for different purposes inside one single custom post type. The procedure is exactly the same. So if you had multiple ones, you would just simply create another gallery widget and then choose the different gallery you want. For this, we've only got the one, so we're going to select gallery. And after a second or so, you'll see it now pulls in some data based upon the images that we've uploaded with this sample post. Now we can go ahead and fine tune the layout. So if we wanted to, we can change this to be 3 columns, we can change the quality of the images, we can change the aspect ratio of the images, we can change what the link for the image itself goes to. So in other words, you could make this something that you can just scroll through the gallery and clicking on it will do absolutely nothing, or you can have it open up like a lightbox gallery, or you can have it a custom URL, entirely up to you. So you could go through and style this however you wanted to. I'm not going to worry about the styling side of things, I just wanted to demonstrate how this is done. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply come back over, drop in a heading inside there, and we're just going to put in property gallery. So we've got a title on this so people know what this is all related to. We can come back and style this a little later when we're ready. Okay, so we've gone ahead, we've pulled in some of the data. We now need to pull in the data to do with how much this property is and the location for where it's based. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our widgets on the left hand side. And we could, if we wanted to, use some of these basic widgets or the pro widgets that are part of Elementor. However, if we scroll right the way down to the bottom, we've got extra elements that are listed underneath the listing elements. And these are specific to JetEngine, and they open up additional options on formatting and how we control the data and how it's going to be displayed. So we're going to tab in and start using some of those. So let's start by adding in the price for this particular property. We're going to grab this dynamic field, drag and drop that over onto the right hand column. You can see that pulls in what it thinks we may want to use. And if we take a look on the left hand side, we've now got the option for source and then the object field. Now at the moment it says post term user data. That's going to pull in this example, the title. And if we wanted to, we could pull in the title, the date, the content, or the excerpt. However, we don't want to use that. We want to use some metadata. So we're going to choose metadata as the option. That now changes to meta field underneath, and we can choose the meta field we want to reference from here. Or we could also just type it in manually. But let's keep this simple and just say we want to put in property price. That now pulls in the price, and as you can see, it just pulls in the number. So it doesn't really look particularly good. So this is where we've got those extra options that are part of the dynamic field. And if we take a look as we move down, you can see we've got things like hide value if empty, a fallback value. But what we're looking at, filter field output and the customize field output. So let's just choose the filter first of all. And this opens up the callback option. Now that sounds a little bit complicated, but all it really means is we can format the way we want the data that we're pulling in from this custom field in certain different ways. Let's click and open that up, and you can see we've got things like format date, format number, get post page link, only URL, and so on. What we want to do is format the number. So we're going to click on format number. As you can see now, that pre-formats that using the default values, which is a decimal point, and then we've got a comma, and then the number of decimal points or places that we actually want to use. Bit of a misnomer, that is. So you can see at the moment it says 750,000.00. Well, we don't need those because we want to create something that's just going to deal with thousands. We don't want those pence kinds of things at the end. So let's just set that to 0. And you can see now that pulls up 750,000. However, we still don't really know what that even means. Is it dollars, pounds, yen? It could be anything. Well, this is where the next option for the customized field output comes in. I'm going to click on there, and you can see what it does is it just shows us a field option. So we've got a percentage sign followed by an S, which is basically just this value. Now we can put anything we want before or after this. We can format it if we want to, and then we can style and control everything inside this little area. So what we're going to do is we're going to put price, space, and we're going to put the pound sign. So you can see now, we now know this is the price, and it's 750,000, all just by using this filter field output and the customized field output. So that's the first part of that done. Now let's go through and put in the location of this particular property. So what we can do is we can come onto here, we can just duplicate this to make our lives quick and easy. Metadata is perfectly fine. Let's just change that meta field, change that to location. Now obviously the price and everything doesn't relate to that anymore, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down, set this and get rid of that completely, and we're going to get rid of this customized field outputs data. We don't want price, we just want location. Put a full colon in there, and you can see now we've got that set up. Now you have more custom fields. You can just repeat this procedure, formatting it any way you want to, putting anything you want in the field format for the output. It's just repetitive, doing the same thing over and over again. But like I say, this is just a basic overview to show you how you do these things. I'm going to quickly go and format this just to make it look a little neater. But before we do, let's just set up the condition for this, just so we know this is going to work as a single post. So again, what we're going to do is come down to the publish option. From there, we've got the option now to go through and set up any conditions we want. Now, because we're dealing with a single post template as opposed to an archive template, we're going to have different options available. So you can see we've got two stages to this. It says include properties and it says all. So what we can do is we can click on there and we could choose anything we want from there. So it might be properties in a property type. It could be in child property types. It could be a whole range of different things. And again, same as we could do with the archive, we can create multiple different conditions for when this template will or will not be used. Let's keep it really simple and just say properties. Then underneath where it says all, if we wanted to assign different layouts to different properties, we could simply start typing in the name of the property. So for example, if we just type in apartment, you can see that pulls in ground apartment because we've got a post type called that, or post called that, sorry. So you can see we can filter this down, or we can be as generic as we want to. So this is perfectly fine. Include all properties. We'll say save and close. We've now set up the conditions to use this to display our properties. So I'm going to quickly just go through and style this, and I'm going to show you this in action so you can see exactly how it all works. So jump back over into the test site. As you can see, I've adjusted the styling a little bit, and we can take a look at any of these properties. We click to go through, and we now have, this is our custom layout all set up with our property gallery. So you can see we can click through. All the text is styled on there. We've got the information about the price, the location, and so on. If we find that this image is a little bit on the wrong side, you can easily come back in, and at the moment, we just set that to be full. I will update that. Come back over and refresh this, and we'll find now that our image is nice full width. If we come back out to our properties again, you can see we can choose a different property, come in, and you can see there's all the details updated for that specific property alongside the gallery. Like I say, all of these things are custom designed. Now, as you've already seen, JetEngine has a lot of functionality for creating custom post types, taxonomies, and so on. However, if we take a look at our properties listing, what we've done is effectively just pull in part of Elementor Pro's layout. And this is fine if you have information like this where you just want an image, a title, maybe the author, and so on. But what if we wanted to do something like include the data to do with how much this property was, or where it's located, or something along those lines? Well, how would we go about doing that? Well, JetEngine gives us the ability to create custom listings. And this is something that I just want to explain how it works and give you an overview. Now, if you consider a listing to be one of these items, so we've got three listings inside here. So this first item, this beachfront studio, where we've got the image, the title, and we've got the description, is a listing. And that's what they kind of call it inside JetEngine. Now, these three are part of what's called a loop. So in other words, all the properties will be displayed 6 at a time, 12 at a time, whatever you set your archive page up to display. But each entry is a list item, and then the number of those is a loop. Hope that makes sense. Well, what JetEngine allows us to do is create custom listing layouts. So let's take a look at how we do that. I'm not going to go into great detail about this because we'll cover this in its own dedicated video a little later down the line. I just want to give you a brief overview of how we can utilize that. So let's come back into our dashboard, come to JetEngine, and you can see we have an option called listings. If we click in there, this will take us through and show us any listings that we currently have, where they're associated, the names, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new one. So let's say add new, and you can see now it says, well, what do you want to do? What's this going to associate itself with? So you can see we've got posts, terms, and users. So if we want to, we could use terms, which are things like taxonomies. Users, which as his name suggests, is a user inside your WordPress dashboard. We're going to keep this to posts. Then it says from post type. Click on there, and again, you can see we've got posts, pages, but we also have properties, which is our custom post type. That's what we want to use. So we're going to select that. Then we're going to give this a listing item name. So we're just going to call this property listing. Then finally, listing view, you can see you've got Elementor or blocks in Gutenberg because JetEngine will work alongside Gutenberg. It's not just restricted to working with Elementor. So we'll set Elementor because that's what we're going to work with. Then we say create a listing item. Once we've done that, that'll take us over into Elementor like you'd normally expect, and we can now start designing that particular listing item. There's a couple of things we can do to make this life easier. So you come back to our properties, you can see they're quite a small section where we've got this set up into 3. So let's kind of replicate that. Let's go to the settings section. Underneath there, we've got listing settings. I'm going to click, and you can see it says, right, well, where do you want to pull your data from? And how big do you want the preview to be? And do you want to make it clickable? So these are just little bonuses that we can use to make the whole process of creating these lists just a lot easier. Let's go ahead and configure this to make sure we've got a nice optimal working environment. Listing source posts is perfectly fine, and as you can see, properties is also set up because this is kind of what we chose when we set this up to start off with. Preview width, this is what comes in useful. Now the layout that we're working with is roughly around 1140 pixels wide, so I'm going to set this to something like 380 pixels, so it'll give me a good indication of the kind of width that we'd have. Don't want to make this clickable? Well, I'm not going to worry about that because this is just for the preview purposes. So now I've done that, I can come back into my widgets. Now if I wanted to, I could use some of the basic widgets we have as part of Elementor and Elementor Pro, or we can come down to the bottom and take a look at using these listing elements that are part of JetEngine. Let's just use those. Dynamic image, we're going to just drag that and drop that in there. Post thumbnail is perfectly fine, but we could, if we wanted to, use a different custom field. Image size, we can set that's what we want. Now, full is going to be a little bit too big for what we're doing, so we could say medium. We can take a look, is that good enough? No, so let's just say we want medium large, that's better. Is it a linked image? We're going to say yes, we want it to be linked, and the permalink is fine. Now all that means is a permalink is just effectively, it's going to be the link that's going to be used for that particular post. So whichever one you click on will take you over to view the details for that particular property. Again, you could use a custom meta field if you wanted to. Now we're not going to go through all the different settings we have inside here. We're going to set this to be centered. We could drop a fallback image in there if you wanted to. So we could set like a placeholder image. It's entirely up to you how you'd want to work with that. So that's fine. We're going to leave the image there. Then we're going to simply come back over. Again, we're going to scroll down to the bottom until we get to those dynamic fields. Drag and drop that inside there. You can see it pulls in what we want, which is the title for this. We could then go ahead and style it, filter it, do whatever we want with it. Now come back out, we're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to just drag another dynamic field inside there, drop that underneath, and this time we're going to set this to be the price. Choose metadata, the meta field is going to be property price. And again, we can do like we did before, we can filter the field output, set our callback inside there to format the number, set our decimal places to be 0, and customize this to say price. And we'll put the pound sign in there, and then we'll just quickly duplicate that, and we'll just say that's going to be the location. So we'll change that to location, scroll down, disable these. Oops, sorry, we need the customized field. So we're going to just change that now to location, and there we go. So we've created our basic layer. So let's just select this block, and what we're going to do is we're just going to drag, put something around it just so it separates it off. So we'll say a little bit of a box shadow. We'll create that. I'm not worried about styling this. I just want to demonstrate how it basically works. And we're just going to choose this and just drop in a little bit of extra spacing. So we'll put 20 padding in there. That's fine. So we'll hit publish on there, and that's now created that for us. However, if we just jump back over to our test site and refresh this page, nothing has changed. So how do we go about changing that? Well, that's very easy. Let's just come out of the listing section, exit to our dashboard, and go back to our templates and our theme builder. Once we're inside there, we're going to come over to our property archive, and we're going to click on edit with Elementor. Once that's loaded in, all we need to do is come up to this post loop, or this archive loop. We're going to delete that from there, and we're simply going to come over now, we'll scroll down to the bottom, and you can see we've got listing grid as part of our listing elements, which is part of JetEngine. Drag and drop that into there, and you can see it says please select a listing to show. So we have listing set to nothing, so we're going to click on there, and we're going to choose property listing. So we're going to click on that, and you see there's our properties. So now we can go through and configure anything that we want on here. So we can set this as an archive template, the number of columns, whatever we wanted to do to make sure it's laid out the way that we want. We've also got things then like post queries, so we can come in and filter these posts however we want. We have a lot more control, but like I say, we're going to go through this in its own dedicated video further on down the line. We'll take a look at how we can use listings in more detail. For now, just knowing that if you want to create something a little bit more unique, you can tap in and start using these listing options as part of JetEngine. So that's how we can go and take JetEngine, Elementor Pro and WordPress and start building much more feature-rich WordPress websites. Now if this has whet your appetite for the kinds of things you can do and you want to learn more, check out the links you can see in the corner right now. They're going to give you much more information on not only JetEngine, but also Elementor Pro and how we can use other dynamic tools like advanced custom fields and pods, so you can take a look at all the options available and make the best decision for you and your workflow. Well, if you've got any comments, questions or feedback or anything you'd like to see covered with regards to JetEngine, drop those suggestions and comments in the comments section below. I'd love to get a conversation started and find out what kinds of things you'd like to see covered in future videos. Well, all the applicable links for this and everything we cover on the channel are in the description below. And my name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.